Hey guys, welcome SUSE QA Tools workshop at the beginning of May 2022. Today will be about the roadmap of what we have conducted within the team within the last month, as well as what we plan to do. So you can all find that on our team wiki page, explaining how we work and the queries that we use. So what I'm going to do now is first look into, first I would like to actually show you that we have a cool helper tool which shows the status of our backlog. So, we have certain limits that we have defined for ourselves and certain goals, and that also shows one of the things that we later incorporated here. So we have multiple more queries here, and we can clearly see that we have a green heart saying that the status is good, meaning that we meet our own goals, for example, regarding the size of the backlog, our reaction time to the tickets in the various priorities and such. So let's talk about the things that had been resolved since the last meeting. So we had the last meeting on the 1st of April. If you haven't realized by now, yes, we presented an April Fool's joke within that meeting, so not everything was completely true what we told there. However, we did talk about let's say the April Fool's epic which we presented there, and came up with some conclusions on, well, what could we actually do, what could help. But first, let's see what we have resolved. So in total, we have resolved 85 tickets per day, which is roughly, you can say, roughly 3 tickets per day, which is exceeding our normal velocity quite a lot, because normally we would have roughly 2 tickets per calendar day, and now we have exceeded that. First, I will go into this blank category, meaning all the various related ticket projects, and you can see that we had a lot of OpenK infrastructure issues, multiple in the QA project, meaning something which is not necessarily OpenK, but something in related tooling or other tooling where we maintain the software or where we still maintain the solutions. Also, there's a collaboration project. So this is like hierarching coordination and an internal project. Now, OpenGL Infrastructure, you can see a lot of red. So we did have multiple problems related to the network infrastructure. That one was machines within the SUSE internal QA, SUSE DE domain being unavailable. The main reason what happened there is that there was an overload in the power infrastructure. So the load for one power line, one fuse was exceeding, and hence part of a rack came offline. So why did we have this overload? Well, because of another story, which is mentioned here: organized labs move to new building and serve 2. So SUSE Nuremberg is changing the building structure, and this is why we needed to move the old QA rack and combine them into so-called serve 2 data center room. And we are a bit limited in the space there, and also we are a bit limited in the power infrastructure there. So this was an outcome of that. Related to that, we also came up with a guide for new machines, so that anyone within SUSE knows better, like how could I bring a new machine into that data center. We also extended the monitoring for the internal infrastructure, which actually goes beyond what we maintain within the OpenK infrastructure, but what you guys, when writing tests, rely on, like the SEC, SUSE, the internal download server, and multiple potential points of failures which need to be available, and we also monitor that. Means that we cannot fix all the problems when we observe something here, but we can escalate these problems and coordinate with the according teams to fix that. Also related to that is that, yeah, we couldn't ping another machine, so this was like a sub-ticket, so that one. And we also had a bigger problem before that. I think I was mentioning that already 1 month ago, is that there were multiple machines that had a connection, but they had a really flaky connection, an unreliable connection. The main root cause that was identified afterwards was a broken network cable somewhere completely outside the scope of QA rec. So, you know, somewhere deep in the SUSE network infrastructure where there was and still is no proper monitoring, and we and you guys, you helped to identify and pinpoint this issue. So thank you to all who contributed there. So yeah, that was fixed, but we also came up with quite some consequences out of that, of where we need to improve, where we need to pick up tasks that maybe some would expect should be done by others, but you know, we are the one relying on that network infrastructure, so we also need to become more acquainted with the according tooling, with the according infrastructure, to be able to maintain that, or at least monitor that and help to investigate problems. Yeah, and you can see some other minor alerts which are related. Some are related, some are not. We also have new machines now in the Prague SUSE data center, which are connected to the Nuremberg instance. Also, that is going on. In the QA project, we can see that there were also some higher importance. Normally also means that this is reactive work, so some regression, some services that become unavailable and such. We also see that we conduct follow-up meetings to issues that happen. The SLO-based queries I just showed you on this QA tools backlog assistant. Some changes we did, or some fixes we did in OpenK review and QMBot. Pavel, you raised your hand?
Yeah, Oliver, I just wanted to say that I have the feeling that recently the connection between the Prague and Nuremberg has been improved. And yeah, I just wanted to say that it's great, because before I was waiting like 20 minutes, let's say, to download an asset from OSD. Now it's like 2 minutes.
Yes, correct. So when we were looking into bringing these two machines for OpenK SUSE into the network, which is mostly Nuremberg based, we realized that the download speed is like abysmal. So we raised that to SUSE IT, and with the help of SUSE IT, with the help of SUSE IT, we could. Okay, so much about this blank project. Next is we have bugs in OpenK that we fixed. So for example, we had that since one day all jobs on OSD, all new jobs were finishing as incomplete. And the root cause there was that within our Postgres database, we were running out of IDs for job modules recorded. So that was unforeseen, and the main reason was that mainly, well, there are certain kind of tests that produce a lot of job modules in results. So we hit that limit much sooner than anticipated. I'm pretty sure that there's no other OpenK instance that was that could have been impacted in foreseeable time. So, well, what we did is we mitigated that in production, and we provided a hot patch there, and then we provided a proper fix for upstream OpenK to use big int rather than 32-bit indices there. yeah, we also see some other warnings or errors that we address that can also pinpoint that we could also pinpoint based on observations of problems when conducting the test. What else? Oh yeah, right. That one. There were also problems in the OpenSUSE infrastructure, which I could see that were also affecting OpenSUSE users, and maybe you have seen that as well. That sometimes like a zipper refresh or a zipper download from download OpenSUSE.org and the mirror infrastructure behind that was really low and unreliable, or still is unreliable. So yeah, of course, we were also seeing that within our tests and trying to handle that accordingly the best we could. Now, feature requests. We have worked on OpenK clone job. There's a command export feature. Basically, what that is you can provide a parameter to OpenK clone job, and then OpenK clone job will actually not execute the command directly, but it will tell you how you could manually replicate that command with the OpenK command line interface. And then you can copy paste that line, adjust and customize it, check that it really does what you would like it to do, and then execute it. So that's a feature that can be beneficial to users. We also came up for that for another purpose, because we want to have investigation jobs for multi-machine clusters fully supported. And for that, we came up with that idea to say, like, well, that would actually help us as well on the way, so why not provide that as a stepping stone for the users directly? Yeah, I mentioned we migrated job modules table to BigInt. So, we had this regression in bugs, and that is the linked do it properly in the upstream OpenK project ticket. We added retry in OpenK bot as well as KM bot. We implemented continuous deployment of all 3 workers on 1 worker first, which of course is just the first steps towards doing it on all the workers. So you will later find in our current backlog that we try to do that for all the 3 workers. In before, what we had and currently what we have for most of the workers is a nightly deployment. So there's not that much of a difference, but to actually improve our feedback time, to ramp up the possibility to use O3 instance as a high quality staging instance for the internal instance. We want to go that one step further. Better network performance monitoring. I already mentioned that we monitor some additional services within the SUSE infrastructure. That's the epic where we decided, like, where do we need to improve the monitoring, where we monitor the download bandwidth. We mentioned that connection to Prague. So we are now not only alerted when there's like a complete outage, but also if the bandwidth is below our expectation. So like a quantitative measure. Then that one is a funny bug. Some users reported you are redirected to the wrong server trying to use the ID OpenSUSE.org as a provider. If you log in, like on both OpenSUSE.de as well as OpenK OpenSUSE.org, if you log in, then you're using this Epsilon authentication provider. And in some cases, that authentication provider was redirecting you to different targets. That already happened in the past in some cases. What, with the help of Andrei Nikitin and Bernhard Wiedemann, what was found is that actually there was a user that had a page open while the OpenK instance was logged out, and that page was recurrently, like every couple of seconds, trying to access the page. But instead of accessing the page within OpenK, it was redirecting to the login server. And that kind of, I mean, it's only every couple of seconds, but still it overloaded and confused the authentication provider. So yeah, we fixed that on the OpenK side by, actually not relying on an authentication route. Yeah. We have improved our documentation, our README pages for anyone that wants to develop or use non-QEMU backends, and as well as use custom developed auth instance, which you can use on production instance, as well as a tryout for testing different backends. So much about the resolved tickets. Any additions or any questions for that? If not, then let's go to the plan. So the next step, I will start with the top level view. This is showing all sagas and what we currently have. This is still, well, it's still unchanged since the last month, but I think it's also important information to just say that it is unchanged. We are still working on stable and updated non-QEMU backends for SLE validation. I just mentioned ASPID testing, so that's related to that saga, because there is a demand to say it's important that we test not only on QEMU but on various backends, and certainly the non-QEMU backends are in some cases less tested, less stable, can benefit from some improvements, can benefit from stabilization. So this is what this saga is about. Then the older one about redundant load balancing deployments of OpenK, easy containers on Kubernetes, where actually I must say lately we haven't been working so much on containers, but rather on this redundancy aspect, which also includes that, for example, we set up new workers in our Prague network environment, connected, and then see how if that can be part of a resilient network. Like, is the bandwidth enough? Do we detect any kind of problems there? Can we provide all the features over something like that remote connection and such? Easy multi-machine handling, multi-machine test as first-class citizens, and I mentioned one example to have OpenK investigate jobs for multi-machine clusters, so that you can benefit from the same features for multi-machine tests there, as well as we can already for single machine tests. And the SUSE maintenance QA workflows with fully automated testing, approval, and release. And one feature that I would like to highlight there is that with the job done hooks, I can show you what they do. Is I'm using the OpenK and OpenK tests group as an example. Well, it's kind of a boring example because you see that the tests are really so stable. So this is why we actually needed to bake some results. So here we can see that there's an additional result. So it's not part of the normal production tests. And so we added a fake failure test out notification. So you can see it says Tina's test. So Tina Müller did the main parts there. It's a test that only does the shutdown when actually we haven't yet booted the system. Of course, it will fail. It will fail very soon. This is what we wanted to have. And of course, we see OpenK investigate doing its thing to say, oops, there's something failing. There's no label yet. It's a new failure. Let's trigger a retry. Why is it only a retry? Well, because the test code actually didn't change and the product didn't change, and still the test fails because we faked it to be like that. And of course, the retry fails as well. And in that case, because it's not a known issue, there's no label here, the auto review doesn't match the failure expression. What happens is that the OpenK investigate scripts read out the job group description, and they take a look. Is there anything configured like a mail to address or multiple of them? And yes, we have 2 addresses configured. And if that is the case, and if the OpenK investigate job hooks in the OpenK config are configured accordingly, then we will send an email informing about this new unreviewed failure and both to that mailing list address, and you can see that special Slack address, which basically ends up as a chat notification in Slack. So if you haven't used that yet, I highly recommend that you try it out, maybe in a separate chat room, a separate dedicated email address, and then you will receive notifications directly for any new unreviewed test failure. Right, so let's go into, okay, Anton, go on.
I just realized that, I don't know, maybe I'm missing something, but in my understanding, there is no actually synchronization point between auto review script and investigation scripts. So you cannot say what will happen first and what will happen after.
And actually, it's highly synchronized. It's both handled within one script, which is called OpenK label known issues. So what OpenK label known issues does, first, it tries to find an auto review match. And only if auto review
Okay.
doesn't match any ticket, it will report it as an unknown to be reviewed issue, which is passed to OpenK investigate. And at that point, we also send
So it's
that
physically
notification.
single flow. Okay. I
Yeah,
thought
right.
it's two independent scripts running somewhere. So okay. Thanks.
Right. So I can show you actually the script which does that, because it's really simple. It's the OpenK label known issues and investigate hook. Okay. So you see what it does. It calls OpenK label known issues, and the output of that script, which is basically the unknown issues, they are passed to this set, which just looks for this header and passes that to investigate and bisect. Okay, and investigate and bisect then does the latest step for the unknown issues, which is ending up with this investigation jobs.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Yep. Further questions or additions to that specific feature? Then let's come to the details in the backlog. So currently we have in our backlog, we have 97 tickets, which is a lot. We have a rather big list of blocked tickets, which is definitely a lot. So of course, in some cases, we are kind of waiting for our own work, because we found that in many cases, like, oh, okay, before we do that, we need to do this and we should do that first. But there are also multiple issues where we are waiting for resolution from other places, like IT related tickets and such. Let's go through the list one by one. So we have new tickets. Yeah, there are some tickets which you can see by the number. They are actually not new. They are old. We already came up with that. But we just yesterday, we had a really nice mob session within the team. And we found a problem which was not actually visible to users that much, but we are also monitoring errors in log messages, and we found an error in the log message coming up that sometimes requests are timing out after, like, what was it, 400 seconds. So this is more than 6 minutes, and then requests timeout to the web UI. And we found that, well, likely candidates could be various routes on OpenK, and what we can do is we should limit the size of the initial request. You can filter for jobs, you can filter for test results, and depending on the filter, you get more or less results. And if you not provide enough filtering, then the potential lists of tests that OpenK would need to return could be huge. It could be so huge that the OpenK instance is actually not able to fulfill that within a reasonable time. So what we should do is limit the size of initial requests. And yes, we came up with that feature request, with that idea already a year ago, but we said, like, okay, we need to work on more important stuff. And now we found again an instance where we said like, yeah, okay, that would really help. So I was just putting that to the backlog, but we still need to estimate it. And that's limited to that epic to limit the overload of OpenGL Web UI by heavy requests. So, sometimes it's just individual requests which time out, and sometimes it's actually impacting the instance itself to be basically like suffering from denial of service attacks, so to speak. Yeah, then we also have other errors that we observe in the logs, and we want to act on them before users are more impacted, or maybe sometimes users are impacted and it's a confusing issue and not clear what happens, but we see the details in the log message, so we want to address them. Then I mentioned we have OpenK workers in the Prague data center, or actually like now it's only one machine in the Prague data center for the OpenK infrastructure. And it's in production and it's used for single machine tests, but for multi-machine tests, it showed problems. Like it looked like it can work on jobs as part of a cluster, but then something weird happens within the test. And, I admit it, nobody within the QA tools team really has a good experience with actual multi-machine tests in details. I mean, we know how to make sure that OpenK starts tests in parallel and that they can communicate with each other, but then something weird is still going on, like the machines cannot ping each other or the connection is lost, and we don't see why or when that would happen. So that task here is to establish a reliable hub setup, which is an important prerequisite for multi-machine tests. And in that case, that would cover either jobs within that worker, so, staying within Prague, or it could just as well be multi-machine clusters, where maybe you have a client in Nuremberg and the server in Prague, or vice versa. And then the workable ones. So there was a request regarding OSQAM. That's you might know OSC. That's the OBS command line client. And the former QAM department was using, and the QA maintenance related engineers, they are using that plugin for OSC in their daily maintenance test review work, and we were asked to change the way we unassign maintenance updates. We don't have a lot of experience, and honestly, we are not that happy to maintain it, but I guess there's no one better suited to maintain it anyway. So yeah, we will try to see what we can do. This is why it's a time box task and not a real feature request, because we will have to see, we have to probe it. We have to probe the problem first before we can provide full commitment. And yeah, we have still 2 ARM workers which don't provide good production grade quality, and we still need to understand why they are less suited. I mean, we have already, thanks a lot to Jerome, you have provided a lot of helpful details there. So one idea was mentioned that these machines are in principle not suitable at all to run virtualization jobs, or it could be that we need to swap these machines out, but there's still some things we could try out to mitigate. Anton?
I remember I was seeing messages about Martin Duha was running LTP tests on ARM workers to investigate something. Is there any end of story? What if he found something, or?
That was actually one of the production grade workers which we do consider stable. So he reserved one of these machines to do to cross check something, but the outcome doesn't help regarding the instability of ARM 4 and 5. We mentioned limiting the requests. So these 2 stories are related to that. First for the test overview page, and second for the investigation page. And then there's also Yeah, some internal workhosts related alert handling. And then we had the stories of running out of IDs within the Postgres database. So that is also an outcome of the lessons learned that we conducted there, that we want to research the industry standard for PostgreSQL software development and admin's best practices. I mean, the specific problems resolved, and we are, future-proof there. We have also looked into, are there any other tables where we would need to do that? So we reviewed all of that, but we would still like to, do a smaller research task to see what's the best practice to handle that. I mentioned continuous deployment of 103 workers, so that's the other side of the task, to have it successfully tried out on one worker, and now we want to try it out on others. Then recovery guidelines to replace OSD workers in the cloud. We already did that for the OSD web UI, but we want to have that for OSD workers for sure. Then yeah, that's sorry that I need to rework, because there was the request, can we please enable comments on IBS as well as Melt again for maintenance release requests when they are not automatically approved. We kind of did that, but the implementation is far from optimal. So we need to rethink how to do it in a proper way so that it's not just causing spam message. Anton?
Regarding public cloud, I know that you have read my comments, but I still have a bit of feeling that you are like not seeing elephant in the room. I mean, with the problem about assets or not getting to. Sorry.
Yeah, right.
Sorry.
So the important part that you mentioned there is that, of course, when we want to test something, then we need the something, which is like repositories, ISO files, the actual requests from OBS and IBS. So that's a separate task that is not displayed there. Honestly, I don't know right now. It could be that we have that in one of the blog stories. It could be that this is planned for something. So yes, you're right. So what is out of scope for OSD workers is getting the actual test assets. This is merely about how can we come up with a representative set of workers, also including multiple architectures, to be able to connect and then be able to execute tests.
But you disagree that this certain ticket should be blocked by the one which I mentioned?
I see these tasks as independent, yes.
Okay.
Okay, then, right. So we mentioned moving QA labs with a bit of limitations that we have in the Nuremberg data center. So we also have some, let's say, some cleanup work or some administrative work where we want to improve the server room management. It seems like now also within the SUSE Q tools team, we need to take up a bit more of responsibilities regarding the non-OpenK related network maintenance. So you can see that reflected in tasks like these. What else? Yeah, improve unit test code coverage for backend S-word. So that would be an example of the improving quality of the non-chemo backends. And for that, we want to improve the unit test code coverage. Also that one, create integration test of Author's VNC module together with VMware's VNC over WebSockets, which is also related, as well as cover manual testing steps, especially for exotic backends. So, if anyone wants to contribute to Author's, and either we have automatic tests or we have at least instructions for manual tests, which, could be followed by someone within our team, as well as anyone contributing from the outside to say, okay, so you want to do something for the SV90 test. How would you be able to actually test that? Yeah, right. So much about workable and new. And now I just want to mention the in progress task. So again, improve existing unit test for VNC module to increase its test coverage before doing any actual changes. So, before we go into changing the VNC backend, which is necessary to support new features, yeah, we should ensure that we do have good test coverage to not break what we already have. So this is just a logical consequence. Then actually we do have something related to containers again in our current work, which is the OpenK proof of concept within Kubernetes. So we already experimented with that from time to time, and of course it's not a problem at all to just start OpenK as in a container and therefore also on Kubernetes. But this one is really about like something that we within the team have available as a stepping stone, so that in the next step we would be able to provide something like a Helm chart which we can properly maintain as part of the OpenK repositories, and not only provide that, but ensure that it's properly tested and such. And yeah, there was actually a SLE maintenance update regression in lib 0, which was also visible on Leap. So this is why I'm mentioning that, because when running, for example, the O3 infrastructure on Leap, we were also affected. That suddenly a big number of tests, not all of the tests, but a big number of tests fail due to some network related problems that, chemo machines couldn't access any external network anymore, and therefore OpenK tests would fail because they couldn't access the network. So yeah, we had to mitigate that. We had to detect the issue, understand the issue, look into a workaround, ensure that it's properly reported, and then follow up with the mitigations over time until we can revert the workaround. So this is why it's currently in progress, and I'm doing that to make sure that after we revert the workaround, we don't have any zipper locks, and we are completely updated with our package to the actual fixed version of these packages. Any questions or additions to the categories of new, workable, or in progress? Okay, if not, then I would look into the feedback block. So what you can expect to be coming soon, which is currently in the works, is okay. We mentioned I mentioned we do look at the actual bandwidth of transmissions, and yeah, we had a problem of 0 bytes per second being recorded when there was actually no download going on, causing a false alert. So yeah, we're handling that. Then we found that some product triggers seem to be going missing, like some tooling or some user is calling ISO's post. We can see that that was done successfully, but then no jobs are triggered, and the according minion jobs which should record the results are also not there, but we could see that they were there at some time. So minion jobs are deleted somehow, one way or another. So looking into that. And then, so that's a funny story with an interesting new color. Why is that a new color? Well, because that's a separate tracker. You know that we have, for example, here, this is like a normal user story, a normal task in this OpenSUSE green. And then we have this more bluish green, which is epics or sagas, so coordination tracker. That one is a new tracker that Chris Duvan created for using auto review in combination with force result. Funny name, failed to download gobbledygook. So Chris, did this actually match to a job with that regex?
So unfortunately, I haven't Yeah, I haven't seen the actual force result comment yet. So it's possible I didn't configure it correctly, since there's like 3 different places where you need to adjust the settings. But
Yeah.
the expectation would be that only whenever the tracker is used would the expression actually be relevant if it's configured correctly.
Yeah, and Anton, because you answered already my the proposal I recorded on the original story about making auto review and first result more secure, is basically acting upon the suggestions that we do there, like a separate project with a separate tracker and a separate set of users that are allowed to use that tracker. Anton?
Yeah, I just probably when I totally agree. It's nice and all is fine, but I just somehow only now realize that yeah, you did like it's a Redmine instance, another instance, or what does it mean? How it technically works?
It's implemented like that, you know, every ticket is in an according tracker. So for example, you can see here it says action.
Yeah,
and you can actually
I
select
know
that.
action and coordination, but
Right.
backend of this, is it like independent Redmine instance? I'm asking just out of curiosity.
No, it's not. It's the same instance. It's just a separate tracker. You know, I can select. I mean, I as an administrator, I can select the tracker, but not everybody else can. So you know, we are going to prevent that there's an unauthenticated user creating an account and then just being able to create a random ticket, and that would influence the results.
So tracker is just administrative instance inside administrative entity inside same instance, right?
Yeah, I can show you here. You can configure separate trackers. So you know action, you know coordination,
we have so many. Yeah.
And we have many more. And you can configure per project which one you want to use. For example, OpenSUSE admins, they use communication and tickets. Some other project use report. And we have created that new one, which is OpenK force result. And what you can do is you can adjust user groups, roles, and permissions per tracker. So, you know, we can say that that tracker can only be used by a limited set of people or roles or groups. Right.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. Thank you.
And then I hope that Marius doesn't mind if I give a sneak peek here, showing job relations on a test overview page. So we have a pull request, and I want to show that because wait, I could do we have that still running? Yeah, we should. Right. So this is the test overview page. And there's a new icon here and there's a new icon here, which allows to and the tests of a cluster are grouped. So you see that ref and sut, they're grouped together. So this one is like part of an indented list. I can fold these, and we can also use that button to collapse all. Right. So yeah, what's the use case? Well, basically, many people see Wicked Advanced as a single test, right? Only the combination of the results makes sense. So you say, does it work or not, right? And then you can see the results combined. And then you can say, for example, here we have a combination, and we can see like, well, there's something wrong on AH64, but on others, both is green. So that's okay. Trouble.
Yeah, what if a test which is hidden would fail? Will I see it?
Yeah, you will. You should see that if that is correctly configured, because then there would the parent already inherits the results as parallel failed.
But if the parent and before the parallel, then this is not true, in my opinion.
Yes, there are certain cases where this isn't true. So this is why by default, we are actually not folding. So we are just introducing the feature that you can actually fold like on demand. And then one of the next steps would be to consider, do we actually want to, go with this page as a default? And if we would do, then of course we should ensure that, it's visible here that the failed is more important to show than passed, so that we would somehow show in this row that there's something wrong in one of the parallel or one of the child jobs.
Note, it should already be visible because you have these branch icons, and the branch icons should be red if any of the folded jobs are red.
Yes, this is secure.
Right. So the color and the pop-up, which you don't see here, already shows that, but we have to check the user experience.
Yes, and if you use filtering, so the parent would be filtered out and only the child is present, then this feature is not effective. So it requires the parent to be present on the page. Actually, the parent needs to be within the same table.
Yeah, so if I just filter for Wicked Advanced, so then, well, yeah, it shows just that, but then there's no
yeah, but if you would have filtered for our children,
I did, right?
Really, was that the child? Okay, yeah, maybe that was the child. Okay, yeah, basically the same result actually. Yes.
Right. If I just look for ref, then I see that there is a child and that it passed, even if it doesn't show up here. So the information is present. Yeah, we have to. Yeah, but you can tell us. I mean, is that enough?
Yeah, it is. I'm sorry, I forgot about. Yeah, thank you very much.
I have a small suggestion. By default, I would show the one which are past collapsed and the one which have failed child expanded. Simple as that.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah, we wanted to be conservative. So we just wanted to introduce the feature, and the overall page isn't changed. It's just that additional icons show up. And now we can think about, like, do we actually want to make this the default? And then of course you can think about, like, only fold if all the jobs pass or something like that, right? Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Right. Okay.
Nice feature. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. So Marius, please remember the idea, and then we can record it as a follow-up.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Yeah. What else to highlight? Actually, one ticket which is in feedback about wrong needles added blocking staging. There's one thing that we are still waiting for, which is another workshop session. And that one, let me check the calendar. Yes, it will actually be the next one. So today we are having the SUSE Q tools roadmap, and the next week we want to discuss about needling best practices. So that's the number 6969, which is exactly that ticket. So teaser for next week. Next week we want to talk about needling best practices. And as you probably know, I'm a bit out of the practice to actually write and maintain tests. So this, I would be really happy if a lot of you can contribute the best practices and even the challenges and the common problems that we have with coming up with proper needles during that workshop next week. With that, Let me thank you all for your attendance and say goodbye until the next time.